change the presenter. So yeah, moving on to our next speaker, Vikas Kumar. He's a senior cloud consultant and works as a contractor in various IT organizations throughout Sydney. After completing BTech in Comp Science, he worked as a Unix system administrator for 7 years before moving to cloud infrastructure automation. Vikas has demonstrated proficiency in all core IT infrastructure tasks, including architecting, POCs, and documenting standard operating procedures. He's passionate about infrastructure as a code, APIs, Kubernetes, and obviously containers. Besides consulting and training, Vikas attends various tech meetups in Sydney and can be found on Twitter with handle Vikas_027 and on GitHub Vikas027. And when he's not automating BAU tasks, you'll find him playing squash and spending quality time with his wife and daughter. Over to you, Vikas.
Thanks for the introduction, Chinmay. Are you guys able to hear me clear? Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'll start sharing my screen. I hope you guys are able to see my screen.
Yeah, we are able to see your screen.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending upon your time zone. Thanks for joining me today. And thanks for OSCONF for accommodating to give me a talk. I hope you guys are doing well and staying home and staying safe in your homes. So as Chinmay mentioned, I have been automating stuff in cloud infrastructure for quite some time. I have around 14 years of experience and come from a solid infra background. I've been doing DevOps stuff even before DevOps became a buzzword. Now, in this talk, I would be talking about Tekton, which is a Kubernetes Native CI/CD. What does Kubernetes Native means? I'll just come through those in a while. So before I move further, if you were unable to catch me, what I've said due to network or headset issues, feel free to comment on the chat window, and I would be happy to repeat or rephrase my sentence. You can, and after this chat, after this talk, if in case you have anything doubts regarding this particular talk or anything else, you can feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, GitHub, or Twitter. So let's get started. So again, so this is again an introduction of me, my GitHub, LinkedIn, and Twitter handles here. Before this begin, so what is today's talk about? So today I will be talking about Tekton, which is a Knative CI/CD solution. So a lot of people have different definitions of Knative. How I can define it in a very layman language is that a Knative is a product which is something which adds components for deploying, running, and manages microservices and cloud native applications to Kubernetes. So Tekton is very native to Kubernetes. All it does is basically have some custom resource definitions in Kubernetes and just work around those. For those who do not know about custom resource definitions or CRDs, what we say in Kubernetes terminologies, think of that as an extension to Kubernetes native features. You just hit a few Kubernetes APIs dedicated to Tekton and and in a declarative fashion and just work around those. Now, why I put together this talk? This is something important. So I was working for a customer and I had a requirement to have a lightweight hosted Kubernetes native CI/CD solution. So I don't have to worry about theoretically about the scaling of the infrastructure, and theoretically I can run a lot of jobs in terms of pods in my environment. So there are a few alternative solutions to this. I think I'm sure you might have heard about GitLab, Jenkins, Spinnaker, and a few others. I'm not going to compare all of these, but all I'm trying to say is that I wanted a very lightweight solution, which is very reproducible on your local laptop, and I just wanted CI/CD. I did not wanted a bloated solution. I didn't want it to have Docker repositories. I don't want it to host my code over there. I don't want it GitHub and Git repositories on the solution itself, like what GitLab does. So there were some other reasons as well why I put together this talk was that. So I'm sorry. So I had faced few challenges when I was playing around with Tekton. I had few challenges. There are not many good tutorials out in the market, out on the Google, and some of them worked partially, some of them didn't work at all. So I just thought of put together this talk so that I would at least save you some time scratching your head, or a few hours of yours to, if in case you want to get started with Tekton. So there are a few takeaways from this talk. Everything would be in demo. So I would be deploying a lightweight Kubernetes basic traffic ingress route. So if you don't know what traffic is, it's basically an ingress controller. In other words, it's basically a route to reach out to your services based on running on Kubernetes. Some of the Tekton concepts, and I would be help you to get started with Tekton pipelines. Now, the product overview. What exactly is Tekton? What it's doing? How did it started? So these are the few key URLs you want to take a note of it. Obviously, we will be sharing the slides later on, but yeah, just in case you are curious to know what it is there. So Tekton was formerly a part of Knative, and now it was donated to CNCF, and now it's part of CNCF landscape. It is Kubernetes native, as I mentioned earlier. You basically have declarative style of YAMLs. You define a desired structure, and you just apply that declarative style structure in forms of YAMLs to a Kubernetes server. Needless to say, we consume the full power of Kubernetes, like scalability, high availability, process isolation, storage isolation, etc. So you have all those good features of Kubernetes, and now you have a CI/CD solutions on Kubernetes. It also has a CLI and has a dashboard as well. So dashboard is optional, but it's good to have in terms of observability. It's written in Golang, and as I said, it has been built by Google, but contributed by CloudBees, Red Hat, IBM, etc. It supports many advanced platforms, including rolling, blue-green deployments, and canary deployments. Obviously, these are all Kubernetes features, so it just utilizes those features and and just make it usable. So Tekton Vision. So this is why Tekton was built with this vision. It wanted something which is composable. So what it means, composable means independent components which joins together to form a pipeline. So I'll come to later in this talk, like what exactly is a pipeline. For if in case you have worked with any CI/CD solution, its pipeline is nothing but a grouping of jobs. Declarative. So as I said, Kubernetes is declarative. So you basically declare something in a form of YAML files and then just apply that. So same thing with Tekton. It uses declarative style. It is cloud native, again, which means that you can basically spin up you can spin microservices in terms of Tekton components and just use that. The other good thing about it is it's reproducible. So Tekton is reproducible. So you don't really need to have an enterprise environment in order to develop on Tekton. You can run it on your local laptop. You can run it on any small VM, even on a Raspberry Pi. So this thing really helps. I think this is great, because when an end developer wants to test out something, when to develop something, it should be reproducible in a very easy and very lame fashion. You do not be dependent upon a huge infrastructure just to test out something. These are the few key components of Tekton: pipelines, triggers, a CLI, a dashboard. So pipeline is basically a building block of Tekton. It consists of one or more tasks, and it's basically a building block of CI/CD workflow. Triggers in this case, as you might have known that in any CI/CD solution, there are some triggers around it. For example, a GitHub trigger. I want to trigger a pipeline based on a Git commit. When I do a Git push, it basically triggers a pipeline and does what I wanted to do with it. It has a CLI in order to you can view logs, run your pipeline jobs, and do some describe your jobs. I'll go through this again in the demo. A dashboard, which is completely optional in terms of Tekton, but it's good to have it. It's good to have it, in terms of observability for jobs and pipelines. So what exactly is a pipeline? So in this figure, it's quite evident what is a pipeline. A pipeline is a combination of one or more tasks. And what is a task? A task is a combination of one or more steps. And step is nothing but a container. So you can say one step is equal to one container in this case. What you can say. Now So in this pipeline, in this diagram, what I have described is that there is an event, and then now this event could be a GitHub trigger, which triggers a pipeline, which could optionally trigger some other pipelines. This is a simple flow. I mean, this is all about Tekton in terms of concepts. It's very easy to follow, and they have just made it very, very simple, in my opinion. Now you can obviously combine multiple tasks. So so one task can actually trigger another task. It could be multiple tasks grouped together as well. Now, so there's some additional concepts in Tekton, which is basically, there's a pipeline resource. So there's a pipeline run and there's a task run. So pipeline resource. So the resource in Tekton is something, which is an input or an output. You can think of like that. So input could be a Git repository. So that is your event source. That is your trigger source. And your output could be in this, could be a Docker image. What does this means? I have a Git repository. I clone it from GitHub. I do something on it. Maybe I do a Docker build and then push it. So your output here is a Docker image, which is built on top of a Git repository, which you have pulled from a GitHub in this case. Now, obviously it is not dependent upon just Git. You can use just GitHub. You can use Bitbucket, code commit, or anything. A pipeline run. Think of this as an invocation of a pipeline. So pipeline is nothing but a job with some defined variables. With pipeline run, you can variabilize. Pipeline is just like a template, and pipeline is you're passing some variables to run a pipeline. So it's just an invocation of a pipeline. You can pass pipeline resources to a pipeline, and those resources get executed in form of tasks. Now, there's something called task run also, so which is nothing but an invocation of a task. So it all it means is that I have a task defined, and now I am just passing some variables, and that is called now a task run. This will be more visible when I'll come to the demo part. Now, how do you install Tekton? There are a few things what you need. Obviously, you need kubectl to interact with your Kubernetes deployment. You need a Kubernetes cluster to be running. Now, in my demo, or I would recommend to use K3D. I think that is the arguably fastest way to deploy Kubernetes in terms of the local development. Now, it is obviously not. You can use any Kubernetes. You can use EKS, AKS, KubeADM, KubeSpray, whatever you like. It will just work. And Tekton CLI in order to interact with Tekton. It's useful for debugging, viewing logs, what's happening. Again, I'll show you this in the demo when I come to it. This is pretty much it is to deploy Tekton. You have a releases file on GitHub. In this case, my release was 0.12, which is in this stage. You just apply it on your Kubernetes installation, and API resources. This is how I was saying that it uses CRDs. So these are the API resources which gets created when you create a Tekton deployment in your Kubernetes cluster. Now you basically run. You basically declare your YAML files around these resources, and these gets executed as part of your pipelines, your task runs, all those things. So as you can see, this pipeline resource, pipeline resources, pipeline runs, pipelines. So these are all what you see as a kind in a Kubernetes YAML. Again, this would be more evident, when I come down to the demo part. Then there is an optional to have a dashboard of Tekton, and these are essentially the 2 or 3 commands you need in order to get started with Tekton. I think this is one of the simplest CI/CD solution I have observed so far. I have played around with a lot of those, but anyways, we can talk about those in a later chat sometime and other ways. Okay, so I'll start with a demo part. So this is my agenda in the demo. I'll create a Kubernetes cluster. I'll deploy a Tekton with a dashboard. I'll create an ingress object for a dashboard so that I can view it on my browser. I'll create 2 pipelines over here. So the code is on this repository. So there are 2 pipelines. So in one, I've just simulated a small production-like scenario that you want to build a Docker image from a code, and you want to use that Docker image to do something. In this case, I'm pulling a private Git repository. I'm building a Docker image out of it, with Terraform and pushing it to Docker Hub. And in the second pipeline, I'm using the same Docker image which is built above, and I'm just running Terraform apply on it. So this is what we essentially do in our day-to-day DevOps life. So we basically have a Docker image, a custom Docker image, put our code into it, put our all binaries like Packer, Ansible, Terraform, whatever you want to keep onto it, and just use that Docker image throughout your pipelines so that you have a consistent environment in your dev, staging, and productions. And then I would show you some debugging tips in Tekton. This is if in case you want to follow along, you can feel free to follow along with me in this demo. If in case you want, all the code is over there. Only the few things you want to change, I'll just show you in a moment. What a few things would you have to change is that this is the repository. You would have to change the secrets. This is all, if in case you want to follow along now or even later, this is the only thing you have to change over here. So this is my SSH private key of my GitHub account. This is the basic cipher value, obviously you have to use. This is what Kubernetes. In terms of Docker, you will have to use a basic cipher value of config.json. So if in case you're following along with me, or I'll just make a font bigger so that it's probably visible to you. Okay. So if in case you follow along with me, just use these values, or even you can do it later on. Everything should work out of the box for you. Now, how I've arranged this repository. Again, this is just for demo purpose. Don't use this kind of structure in your production environment. This is just for demo. So there are 3 branches in this repository. One is master branch, which has my Tekton YAML files described in a declarative way. Then I have a Docker branch, which has nothing but a Docker file. In this Docker file, I'm doing nothing. I'm using Alpine-based Docker image just to keep the footprint low, and I'm using Terraform version. Okay, what I'll do is I will also put this repository on the chat so that it's visible to you guys. Here it is. And yep, so here this Docker file would be used to build a Docker image, and one other branch is Terraform. So sorry, Terraform. Come on. Yep. And this is a super simple Terraform file. I just wanted you to just know the usage of it. I didn't want you to build anything fancy. But again, you can obviously you can add more files over here and make it as per your environment. This is just a super simple example, just to showcase the use of Tekton. In this case, I'm echoing it output, which I've defined over here. That's all I'm doing in this case, nothing else. Okay, now coming back
because can you just increase the font size or zoom in into your browser, because
sure.
Yeah,
is it any better now?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sorry about the low font size. Okay, so I'll just repeat it. So this is super simple, a Terraform. I think the simplest way of Terraform can be used as possible. So all I'm doing is echoing a resource. Again, this is just for testing out. You can build a more Terraform file and make it more complex if in case you want. This is just for demoing purpose. I'm just echoing a resource over here. That's pretty much it is. So what I would be using in this demo is a master branch to start with. And I would be creating a cluster as per the agenda. I would be creating a cluster and then the deploying dashboard. Let's get started with the demo. I'll increase the font over here. So I hope you can see my VS Code. Can you? Is my VS Code visible? Okay, cool. So what I'm doing is I am just creating a cluster over here. The simplest way, as I said, is to create a cluster. I am creating a cluster with K3D. K3D is a Rancher product, and it uses K3s as the background and just publishes this creates a Kubernetes cluster for you, one node Kubernetes cluster, just to play around with it. And in this case, I'm just publishing a port 8081 so that I have an ingress controller running, and I can use this ingress controller to host my dashboard. In this case, it takes about a minute or two to get this running. I am just checking whether it's ready or not. Looks like it is. So if in case I do a kubectl node, I should have a cluster running. Yes, so my master is ready. I just have to wait for a few my Ingress controller to be running. I'm just checking my Ingress controller. Okay, looks like my Ingress controller is not ready yet. It would take a while. Okay. In the meantime, what I will do is I will actually deploy resources. I will deploy the Tekton resources. So as I mentioned in the slide, all I have to do is use a deploy
Vikas,
YAML.
can you, Vikas, sorry to interrupt. Can you increase the size a bit for this also?
Sure, I can. I'm just doing it now.
Yeah, great.
Is it good?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, so now all I'm doing is deploying Tekton now on my local Kubernetes cluster. So it created a ton of resources over here. I will not go into much detail about what resources does, but I will show you a brief of things what it does. So now if in case I do I go over here and look at the resources, I have a few resources over here. So this is my Kubernetes resources of Tekton, just Tekton. So this is the resource what Tekton has created for me. And now if in case I have also installed a Tekton CLI. And if in case I do a Tekton version, it should show up my pipeline version, my client version, which is my Tekton CLI version, and my pipeline version. The pipeline version over here is the 0.022, which is the same one which I had installed a minute ago, this one. Now, optionally, I can have a dashboard. So I'm just deploying a Tekton dashboard now. Okay. Now this is what I have. So I think my Ingress control should be ready now. Yes, it is. Just because I have not created an Ingress resource yet. So this means my Ingress controller is ready and it's ready to, I can create resources, Ingress resources, and those could be, viewed over the browser. So in my demo, I have created a few files. So you might notice that, I've numbered these files. So why I have numbered these files? I've numbered these files because it's so that it's easy for you guys to understand and how these resources are mapped together. Because it took me a while to get my head around all of the resources and all of the YAML files, how they are mapped together. So I'll go through this one by one slowly, so it's easy for you to understand. So in this case, now I am just deploying my. So I have just have an alias of K. I'll just probably show it. So I've just used the alias of K for kubectl apply. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You can use anything, but I just like this. Okay, so I have a dashboard created. Now I should be able to view my my Tekton UI. Let's try to view it. Just move this away. Yep, so my Tekton dashboard is available now. So obviously you can see there are no resources, nothing at the moment. Now let's populate some resources, or let's populate some data over here. Okay, so now I'll show you what I have.
Because quick question, are you using any special plugin for this demo?
Plugin of what?
There is a question, are you using any VS Code plugin for this demo to run your, I see it's just a terminal, Git terminal, right?
Yeah, it's just a Git terminal. So, I have obviously a lot of plugins for my prompt, for my VS Code. But in order for you to follow on just Tekton, you basically don't need those plugins. I have customized my VS Code, my terminal a lot. So, but maybe in your case, yeah, just for the following around the demo, you don't really need to know what this is. There's nothing special I'm doing out of the box.
Okay.
I know it might look a little bit fancy, but yeah, how it is. Okay, so I have my secrets file. Let me just hide this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have my secrets file where I have defined my GitHub and my Docker secrets. So this is my GitHub secret. this is my my private key, and obviously I will not show you the full private key just for security purpose. And this is my my GitHub secret. So this is the same file which I showed you over on the browser. Only thing which has changed is I've placed my basic key for values over here. I've just replaced my personal values or my secret values over here. This is the same file, exactly same file. That's it. And now I'm creating. Let me create resources. Now I will create some resources over here. So what are resources? Again, resources are something which is input of a pipeline and output. So in this case, what I am doing is I am using my Git repository, which I showed you on the browser, and I've named it like this. Let me make it bigger. Yep. So this is my Git repository, and the branch over here is a revision, which is Docker, and the provider is GitHub in this case. So this is one resource I have created for my Git repository, and this is my Docker resource. So in this example, this is my input of a pipeline, and this is an output of a pipeline. So a pipeline takes input as a Git repository. It builds a Docker image and outputs a Docker image. When I say output, all it does is it basically pushes to Docker Hub. So this is the URL which gets pushed to. I hope it's clear. So what I'll do is I'll create this resources. So these are the two pipeline resources. See this pipeline resources I have created. Now what else I have? In my third file, I have a task. Now a task is also, it takes some inputs. So see this inputs is my Git repository, and output is my image. So this is again an abstract value. I will pass these as a variables later on, in the pipeline. So this is a task. So again, if in case you go back to the diagram, a pipeline is a collection of a task. So this is one task I have in this stage, in this case. So it uses a Docker file. It uses a Kaneko by default. Kaneko is nothing but a product by Google. So it helps you to build containers, just build and push containers easily. This is what I have used for my task. Task could be multiple steps. In this case, one step is I'm just echoing the variables. You don't really need this, but it's good for debugging. This is just an example to how you can debug Tekton steps. So you can add some variables. In this case, I'm just adding some variables. This is just taking some parameters and just printing those parameters. Then over here, this is a task which is doing a building and pushing. It uses Kaneko. All it's taking some variables for my Docker files, some context where my Docker file exists, and this is a destination. Destination in this case is my Docker Hub image repository. Okay, let's create this resource. KA3 star. Okay, now the task has been created. So my pipeline KA4. So my pipeline over here is this. So this just references to a task. So task over here is build and push, and this is the same task which I had created earlier. So pipeline is a collection of tasks, and in this case, I'm just referencing creating a task over here, creating a pipeline with certain tasks. You can also have timeouts. You can also have retries. Retries is something really good. Retries is something really good. Now, okay, and then I will run this pipeline. So I'm creating a service account for. So service account is a Kubernetes concept. So all I'm using a service account with some RBAC values, which basically uses my secrets. And then I will use and I'm running this pipeline now. So now ideally, so when you create a pipeline for a first time, it gets executed automatically. See this? So now my pipeline is running. I will come back to this. This will take a minute or two. I'll come back to this later. And in the meantime, I'll show you some other things quickly. I think we are running out of time. So I will create some other resources. Now I have creating another resource. In this case, I'm creating a resource for So basically, this will pull a Docker image, which we have built in the previous task, and just run Terraform apply using the Docker image. I'm creating a task now. Creating 9. Now I should have two pipelines running. One is just building image, another just using that image and running Terraform apply. We'll come back this to in a minute or two later on, and this should be completed by then. In the meantime, I wanted to show you how you can do debugging quickly. So if in case, so this is how you can view logs through the CLI. So this is my pipeline name. So if in case you do minus F. Okay, I think the pipeline is, oh, sorry, I need to set up my correct properly. Yep. So this is how you can view the logs. So in this case, my pipeline has successfully completed, and this is how you can view the logs. This is very looking. Font is too big for me to understand a lot of here. I think it's clear over on your screens. Yep. So this is and this is my Terraform apply. So you can see the logs over here. And now if in case I go back to my browser, so you see this, so both the pipelines have been executed successfully. So one is for building a Docker image. So see, these were the variables I had. This is the first step. This is the second step. In this step, I am just building a Docker image and pushing it to Docker Hub. If in case you go to my Docker Hub repository, and over here, so see this pushed a minute ago. So this has been pushed through my pipeline. I hope you guys are following along. Okay, and now in the second my pipeline, I am just using the same image and running Terraform apply. That's pretty what it is doing. Again, you don't really need this dashboard. You can do a lot without this as well. What else I wanted to show you is yep, and there is also a very good API. So you don't really have to use your CLI. You can also use API. Obviously, APIs are good in terms of automation. So I have just used the postman to trigger the API. I'm just making a curl post call onto my pipeline run. In this case, my pipeline name is this pipeline.build Docker image. I can do I send. This should trigger another job for me. See this? This has started another job for me. So you can trigger pipelines through the UI, through the API. I can also trigger pipeline through the UI, to the API, or through the CLI. So you have all the three options to run pipelines. One other thing I wanted to show quickly was, come on. So all your pipeline gets run as a pod, as a multi-container pod. Now, I hope you have visibility, or you know what a multi-container pod is. So multi-container pod is nothing, a pod with multiple containers. So if in case you see this, there are 5 containers in this pod. So these are the steps. There are some variables. Some all of our steps is there. So why this runs in a multi-container pod? Because it helps you to basically have process isolation and storage isolation. So your pods can also share the storage, underlying storage as well, and it's good to view as well. So these are all my completed jobs which get stored on your local Kubernetes. And these are only the three containers or 3 pods which should be running in order to have Tekton running. That's pretty much it is. And obviously you can look at all these where you can hover here. One last thing I wanted to cover was you can also do a task run describe. You can also describe an image over here, which is, I think, is a good way to do it, which gives you a pretty good idea of what happens.
Because there is one question from Hari.
Yeah.
He's asking, can I natively promote an environment from dev to staging to production by promoting?
So there is no concept of promoting in Tekton, but obviously you can have different steps in which you can say, okay, this is my environment, and now now I'm referencing to, for example, a dev branch. Now I want to refer to a prod branch. You can have a different pipeline resource, just like what I have treated above, which is pointing to a different branch, like for example, a production branch. Now, obviously, you would have to chain all your tasks together or your pipelines together, which have certain, some tests going on, some unit testing or some load testing before you change it. So you can obviously change all these tasks together. Just have to use a different resource, a revision a different resource. I hope that answers your question. I think I'm good now. This is all I wanted to show. I'm happy to take any questions if in case you have any.
Yeah, I think any more questions on the chat? I think there were a few questions related to the plugin of the VS Code, but that is already answered. I think that's it. So thanks a lot, Vikas, for a great session, great demo, and the slides as well. Okay, so I think we're good on time. We would be skipping the Kahoot session, the quiz session, as we see there is a bit of a lag with the Zoom and the YouTube broadcast. So we'll skip as of now, and we'll move to the next session.
Okay, and I'll stop sharing my screen. Thanks again for joining me. And
Yeah.
I hope you guys stay safe and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thank you.
Yeah.